Okay, it's this video and stuff like that. I want to talk about this video, stuff like that. Well, anyways, I'm gonna walk all the way around here, get to the river, take a piss in the river, the dry river. There's no water right now, but apparently there's a dam really far away, and they open up some water every once in a while. But I want to talk about words. Charlie Kirk, he talked about there was 200 men in a room for 2 hours, and then they said, what were you thinking about during those 2 hours? And they all said sex, sports, and politics, and just big world events, future, what they're doing in the future, like what they're doing next week and stuff. But it was like these big macro thoughts. And they didn't tell them, hey, we're going to put you in a room and then we're going to ask you after 2 hours what you're thinking. They just said, we're going to do something in 2 hours. And then at the end of the 2 hours, they were just like, okay, what were you thinking in the last 2 hours? So there's a bunch of guys in a room, and they're thinking about sex, which is kind of weird. Then they did the same thing with women. And it was like 100% of them, you know what they were talking about? Conversations that they had earlier in the week. Macro versus micro. And then Charlie Kirk says, for the record, no man in the history of the species has thought about a conversation that he's had earlier in the week. And the girl that he was talking to says, wow, so you just lied. As if Charlie Kirk's gonna lie in front of the cameras to all those people on something like that. That was so obviously not true, and he's just gonna lie, try to get one over on her, and he's like, yeah, it's called a joke. I'm sure there's a guy somewhere who's recollected on a conversation that he's had earlier in the week. Meaning, oh, so now if you want to go literal, then now it's a joke. But what was interesting is he said for the record, and you had to pick up on his tone in order to get things done. And I just want to say this, I have a video where I tried this, and I kind of talked with this sarcastic tone the whole time. But the guy that I was talking to didn't know that. But the camera world I knew would. And this comment finally 9 months later, why are you talking like it's sarcastic? And that's kind of my point. It's like, with different people, you can get away with different tones. And sarcasm is very dependent on the audience. I thought it was interesting that different cultures, different gender, she didn't pick up on the sarcasm or the hyperbole or the whatever. And how sarcasm made it into language. I've always thought it's a bit of a devilish language, but it is what it is. It's not like you get rid of it. I actually prayed with sarcasm before, a long time ago, and I thought that God saw my heart. But he ended up testing me in a dream. He didn't know if I was his after that prayer. And I was alone. But it didn't sound very sarcastic. But God should be able to see my heart. And it was just funny because, you know, the supernatural realm was looking at me and I'm saying some things and meaning something else. That's not really a biblical idea. And my heart really wasn't that great. And it was like, there was choose God or the devil. There was a gun to my head. I had just cussed out Frank Turek in prayer. First time I think I ever second time I ever talked bad about someone in prayer, alone, by myself. And it's kind of cringe to even think about that. To think about doing that, it's kind of, really? But I was like, it's one thing saying it right now, or even like out here to people gossiping, and is one thing, but like really getting a microphone and going up to God's ear and then like complaining about somebody else's sins is like another level. Like, but Frank Turk's always pissed me off because he has pretty much the same sins as me. Bad jokes. Well, he has good jokes. He's funny. But I just don't like that many jokes in that situation where there's cameras and there's a bunch of people in the room. And he's popping off like marginal jokes when I think the stakes are really high there. But I'm kind of okay with it on Facebook. I'm definitely okay with it on Facebook and even on video, because the people watching it are watching a video. But for whatever reason, in person, I'm just like really sensitive. And I just think it's a different situation. But I mean, I might be the only one with that standard. Especially Facebook, people take that very seriously. I know Twitter had a no sarcasm rule, but if it's obvious enough, Andrew Tate was like, hey, I'm a woman now. And it was like obviously a joke and sarcasm, but you're not supposed to do that. But my friend CJ, I was talking to him and he said something that triggered me, and he said, words have meaning, right? And I said, no, actually. And I'm one of the smartest people he knows, he says. And in some ways, I mean, everyone's smart in different ways, but he thinks I'm the smartest guy he knows, and I'm really good at like analytics, breaking things down, and he trusts me with certain things. But he's pretty smart too. He was a semi-professional poker player for 2 months, and he actually made money. So he's good at that game, which is a smart person game, obviously. But he says, words have meaning, right? And I said, actually, no. Whether or not you're joking matters, sarcasm matters, context matters. And I gave the example here on the basketball court. I walk up and it's a 5-on-5 game, and they're all black, calling each other nigga, nigger. Generally nigga, but niggers every once in a while too. Nice shot, nigger. Nice shot, my nigga, and stuff like that. And then I walk up and I say, what's up, niggers? Or if I say, what's up, niggers? What's up, my niggas? See how the tone? And I said, it's not just the words, but the tone, the context, the environment, who you're saying it to, the intimacy levels, whether or not there's an inside joke built in. And also, sometimes what's being said can be so ridiculous, it's auto sarcasm. Like if you say, one time I jumped 150 feet in the air. The tone is very serious, but the content of what you're saying is so ridiculous. It must be some sort of hyperbole or whatever. Well, it turns out Jesus spoke in hyperbole, parables, one of the first to do it. I'll destroy this temple and build it up in 3 days. And what he's talking about there is the resurrection, but he wanted to troll the Pharisees. Short term, medium term, and long term. And then he told his disciples, for the others of you that want truth, this is what I meant. And knows. So as long as you're true as you're saying it, it doesn't really matter what you're saying, as long as you know what you're saying. And this is how God operates, and that's why I want to say words do not have meaning, K-N-O-T. When I was a small child, must have been 5 years old, 6, around kindergarten, 7, I just learned how to read. First grade, maybe, I was a very small child, baby. And there was this book called Mouse with Cheese, and very massive font, a lot of easy words. And I read the whole book. Bit of an accomplishment there. And then I saw the Holy Bible, King James Version. And God or self, whatever it was, this thought came into my head, and it was like, if you read one verse, you can tell Aunt Leslie, that you read the whole Bible. I said, okay, it's going to be hard. And I opened up to a random verse, probably in the Old Testament. and I was getting through these really tough words, really tough sentence, and it hurt my little brain, my little baby brain. But I did it, and I read the whole verse, and I read the whole Bible. So I go to Leslie, and I said, "How you doing?" "Good. I read the mouse with cheese. I read the whole Bible." And my older cousin, was looking at me like this, like, "What is he saying?" And I said, "I read the whole Bible." And she says, "Really? You read the whole Bible? Really?" And then she gives me a trivia quiz on like Moses and what he was doing, a content quiz. And I just remember thinking, this would be so amazing if I knew the answer, but I didn't. And then I said, I read the whole Bible. And then she was like, whatever. And my cousin's like, wow, it's so profound, because it's like, there's no way, but like, how can a little kid like this lie? Like, he thinks he's telling the truth. Well, 15, 20 years later, 30 years later, almost, no, 30 years, I'll be 37. So it must have been 20 years later, I realized HOLE, whole Bible. I read the whole Bible, meaning one verse, one little hole, but you heard it, WHOLE, and I said what I heard. But in English, we sometimes add a letter, use the same sound, whole and whole, which is which. There, and they are all, same sound. They're going to the bookstore. Other languages are not as ridiculous. And then you have some words like pterodactyl, and there's a silent P at the beginning, of course. You have to have that. But it's not P pterodactyl or pterodactyl. It's just silent. And why is that? Someone decided it. I don't know, it's like, well, it's silent. Yeah, okay, why is that? I don't know, it's silent. Sometimes it's silent. I remember there was politicians changing words. I want to be a president. I don't know if I ever want to be a politician. I would have no interest in being a governor or anything like that. It's got to be President of the United States. It's a breath of fresh air. I love that job. I like hard questions. I have all the answers. The answer is talk to my team. I have specialists. The Q15, I have specialists there, and the American people send in a person, sometimes exactly what I need. And I said, hey, answer it. But I want to be quick wits and be the personality chief citizen. And we have some good governors, and for whatever reason, human beings have that anxiety about running for president, and there's really not a lot of people who think they're qualified. And it costs a lot. It seems like an unrealistic thing. But I think it's very, very easy with the internet. And I can just, do it. When I look at, there was this Trump question, hey, what's some of your favorite Bible verses? It broke my heart. I don't want to talk about it. The Bible's very close to me, but I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I joke very much so. The Art of the Deal is my second favorite book of all time. Okay. Old Testament or New Testament? Probably. What he should have said was, I don't want to talk about it. But he's thinking, this one's got to be easy. And then he realized that's actually really hard. Probably equal, I would say. And in Would You Rather, neither is an abomination, but both is a special form of an abomination. And Andrew Yang, they asked him his personal favorite, salty and sweet. Salty or sweet? It's a classic. You know. Red or blue? You know what he said? Dare I say both? Yeah, so if that's how you're gonna handle very difficult questions, because it's a difficult question, don't get me wrong, salty or sweet. In fact, my answer is very complicated. I'll tell you my answer. Today, salty, by a pretty, decent margin, actually. When I was a small child, it's so close, but I would go with sweets by a very, very, very small margin. I remember I ate those tagalongs, and I could not stop eating it. I saw somewhere on YouTube, and it made sense to me. The bottomless pit in hell is not where you want to go. Well, what's in there? You know what they said? Endless, infinite comfort and pleasure. That's it. You're comfortable and you're filled with pleasure. It's like, wow, but isn't that what a lot of people want? Yeah, it is. So then that's hell. That's the worst hell. Yep. Wow. Reminds me of Emanuel Swedenborg. It's very similar. It's the banker who loves money more than anything, and then his hell is he's sitting on a table looking at money, and he's just getting richer and richer and richer every second. And he's comfortable, and he's filled with pleasure. Money, pleasure, he's just investing in his mind or whatever, and he's maximally satisfied. Well, we're supposed to be like God, and better to be a house of mourning than a house of feasting. We're supposed to be embracing Jesus' hug, and there's so many adventures out there, and there's good things to do. There's growing throughout the eternities. So to be capped out and God's thinking, listen, I'm just going to leave you here for a few million years and I'll get you later. Because there's still experience that you can gain from digesting pleasure and comfort. But you grow as a God, as a demigod, so slowly in that environment. And it's not what God wants. Jesus grew very quickly as a carpenter, and then his ministry, then doing the atonement. But for me, I've grown very, very, very quickly. I feel like I'm 65 or 70 or even 150 or 200 because I've gone to the hospital 7 times now. 5 times were pretty crazy, and I've gone through some schizophrenic haze and stuff, and God wants to rework that clay, and then constantly being told that I'm a bipolar schizophrenic by my dad, and just a reminder every night with the meds and stuff. Can be very taxing, but I do have other redeeming qualities that most people don't have, that I wouldn't trade to get rid of my schizophrenia. Helen Keller was deaf and blind, and she was an amazing person. She had, quite a lot there to make up for it. And I do as well. I'm really good at anti-chess, really good at bowling, extroverted activities. You wouldn't think I could do bowling, but I'm like top 10,000. I don't know, probably, you could argue top 3,000. But only 1 in 10,000 people have a perfect game, and I have 20 of those. But I was a musician, and my favorite is 350 Bible verses memorized. And the Bible hits hard even out of context. but I have a lot of them in context, like the Proverbs are all in context. I preached at churches, which was terrifying the first 5 times. And the bishop thanks me. I have been, I've preached many times where I'll cut myself off. They would have let me keep going. And everyone enjoyed it. People come up to me afterwards and tell me. Sometimes I preach with the bloodline, like with the passionately. And other times it's just the information, but with the political pulpits, it will not be anywhere near as nerve-wracking as the religious ones, because I'm trying to be silly, whereas religion, I'm trying to remove all silliness, all jokes and all sarcasm behind those pulpits. And I know there's men, women, and children in there. At a singles ward, it's a little bit different. It's just 18 and up. So there's no children in there. So sometimes I'll make my message a little bit more simple, easy to understand. Because I know there's so many children. And some of them are, eager to learn. The older people, you got to talk to them a certain way, but they already know everything they need to know. They just want to hear it again. And the small children, especially like 10, I would say, 11, they go to church to learn and grow. I messed up as a small child. My dad took a risk he didn't know he was taking. He doesn't know the difference. He was living in the moment. And I turned out differently than if I had done Boy Scouts and gone to church by force. My stepmom did force us to go to church, which was a massive win, but it was a different church. And God says, all right, you don't want, rocky road with syrup and marshmallows. How about single vanilla? Just 1 point gospel, faith alone, no repentance directly preached. You got to get it in directly, and we'll share some jokes and stuff behind the pulpit there. And I definitely grew as a person with that church, but I was so committed to that version of Christianity. But basically, when I was 8, 9, 10, my dad says, I was like ready to play video games on Sunday morning, and can I go over to Trevor's house and play his video games and hang out with him? And I would really enjoy that if I could do that till 5 p.m. And Ryan's like, you want to go to church or do you want to do that? And I was like, well, he says, up to you. I'll go to Trevor's. Yeah. And I chose pleasure over painful spiritual growth. And part of it has always been for me, and this is going to sound really lame, but it's probably just demonic. I don't like getting dressed that nice, and the belt and the top and stuff and everything you wear, the buttons, and the casual church is just a nice shirt. And I don't know, it's just still church clothes, but it's just not as bad. It's not as nice, rather. But I've been doing this new thing, because I still have that. I don't like getting dressed with a tie. If I know I'm speaking, I gotta do what I gotta do. A couple times I was manic, schizophrenic haze, I couldn't even get dressed. And the Lord's like, you're speaking and you're not getting dressed either. You're just putting on this Jesus sweatshirt. I said, okay. And I could barely move, and I'm going. But if it's the 7th, 14th, or 21st of the month, okay. I won't wear shorts that often, if ever, but I'll just wear pants and a sweater or a Jesus sweatshirt and walk in with that. It feels so good, and if anything, they're just like, hey, nice. And before I was like, well, I really don't want to get dressed, so I guess I'll go evangelize at another church, because that's pretty strong. That's hilarious. And I tell the pastor, hey, do you know any Hebrew or Greek? No, I don't. Oh, isn't this your job? How about one Greek word? Can I tell you pistis? Okay. And then he's like not going to weave it into his teaching. But like, I'll give him these massive comment sandwich, and then he's like, okay, I can only take so much, but thank you. Wise man likes being rebuked, fool hates it. He's a mix. And he's a mix on stage too. He says, 95% good water and 5% urine. 99% water, 1% urine ruins the whole thing. And I just wanted to come up to him and say, I like what you said, 99% water, 1% urine. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, I just want to say, that's what your preaching is. And it's actually like 70-30. It's like 90-10. It's like he has so many foolish stories and stuff, which is fine if you're like at a baseball game and you're weaving in the gospel and then you bring up these foolish stories. And they're not like sinful stories, it's just dumb. At first, it ties to the message for a few seconds, or possibly even as long as 30 seconds or a minute. And then he goes to a second story, which takes another minute, and it really didn't have anything to do with anything. And then he goes to a third one, and it has absolutely nothing to do with anything. And I was like, okay, dude. And then he brings it all back, continues. Whew, it kind of gets me a little headache. LDS Church, if there's a little misspeak at the local church, it's nails on a chalkboard for everyone. But it's really rare that it happens. I'll look up at our local guys, and they're speaking with the Spirit, or they have a written talk, and I enjoy it, all that. It feels really good. And it's the restored gospel, the restored truth, and the true church. And it just feels so good, too. And it's the emphasis, which is on obedience, and everyone's down for that. Like the other churches, it's like they're so obsessed with these Pauline interpretations of the scriptures where it's like not of works and let's focus on Jesus. But if you're focusing on Jesus and you're holding on to all your sins and you're not really trying to go for holiness, you're just trying to go for thankfulness, it's going to be a different life. And God sees us differently regardless of what people might say. He might love us the same because that's what he does. He loves us. There's a part of the agape love where it's just, you look at someone on it with a bad behavior and you see them for the million, billion, trillion year art lesson. When we were little intelligence wisps, we may have co-created our own flesh over 1 million years in an art class. And we could have spent 1 million years on the nose and 1 million years on the jaw and 1 trillion years on the body. And we're all so beautiful. And then we fill the body up and we go into this life for 100 years. You only got 100 years to live. And when God sees you in a bad mood, sometimes he just says, well, I remember that nose. We all agreed it was the most beautiful nose in the cosmos. And on Earth, everyone's like, oh, it's an average nose. Everyone like looks over it. Or all they think about is your personality, so the nose is disgusting because you have a bad personality to 90% of the population, so it's like, that's a bad nose. But God might be like, when we were all intelligences, this was the best nose. And he's so mad at you, but it's the best nose. you know? And that's what I mean by unconditional love. It's like, oh, they'll always have that nose. It's kind of like my brother. If my brother did some really bad things, I may disown him as a brother, but that line for God is so much deeper. He would have to mess up so much more and become perdition level. Where for me, Justin could break my heart by just going to jail. But if he goes to jail, God's just like, that's okay. I love people in jail, and Justin's gonna help people here because he's so much better than everyone. And God's thinking, he's the best guy in jail. And I'm thinking, a Smythe going to jail? And I'm just like all mad. But God's love is like, reaches farther. Proverbs 14:29. I don't have this memorized, it just popped up. I saw it today on my desktop. I was going to have it as my background. He who is slow to wrath is wise. That's what the verse says. I agree. I agree with that. My dad, not only is he slow to wrath, he's quick to recover. When he gets it all out there, and he's just, okay, cool. And I've never seen my dad mad for more than a day. How many people could say that about their parents? When the stock crashed in 2008, my dad's just like, man, forget this. And he cashes out at the bottom, not really knowing that you're not supposed to do that. And then he said, oh, I feel so much better now. It can never crash on me again because I got cash, you know. And I've gotten weird arguments with my dad, and he doesn't know I'm right till later. And sometimes, to be honest, he's right and I'm wrong. And if I knew that, I would admit it. And sometimes he doesn't explain his position very well. I have to think about his position in more depth. And later I feel like, oh, he is right. And then I go to tell him, hey, you're right. And then he says, I'm wrong, Eric, I'm sorry. And I was like, well, I was just about to tell you that. You know. But, okay, thank you. And my dad is not obsessed with winning arguments unless he feels like he has a 100% chance of being right. Like one time I was at outpatient, and I went there, and it was so clear to me that it wasn't going to help. So I said, yeah, I don't like this. And he goes, yes, you will. And it makes sense what he's saying. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I will do some outpatient. Ouch. Sorry. I just had a thought of Paige Zollinger. That's the girl that I love. I was just trying to pick I was trying to pick a background. Oh, sorry. Shoot. Dr. Pepper, what is it? And cream soda together. Shout out to Dr. Pepper with cream. It's not as good as Dr. Pepper, but it's different. Sometimes that's all you need. And I got this out of a vending machine, maybe? $3, maybe? Anyway, she's so beautiful. She always was, but oh, she's so beautiful. And she backs it up. But like, she'd probably barely hang in the top 75 if she was wicked. She wouldn't be very exciting. But as a Zollinger too, it's like crazy. She always backed it up. I have a thing for holiness and righteousness. I like LDS girls and stuff already. And she's always had this silent disapproval for foolishness and wickedness and dumb stuff. She's never laughed at a stupid joke before. She's laughed at me. Somebody told me she laughed because I was dribbling to the rack on like a 9-foot hoop, and I like fell and the ball hit the bottom of the rim, and it's like, you can't not laugh at that. And she was busting up laughing, especially since it was me. But I was a really good basketball player in 5th grade, but not in 6th grade, because 6th grade everyone got strong and there was bigger kids from other schools, and I was below average. But in elementary school, I was a big fish in a small pond. I was really tall, but I beat Paige 1-on-1 in knockout 9-3. We played for like 30 minutes. It was so hot. I was like, what the heck? I was like, is this happening? Actually, the hottest moment I've ever had, well, there's been a lot of hot moments. But one of them, we were playing Capture the Flag. One of the worst games of Capture the Flag ever. You're supposed to have a bigger jail, and everyone played offense, and there was no defense, and everyone just kept rushing to the flag over and over again. But Paige and I somehow got captured, and we went to the same jail. And it was hot outside. It was like 90 degrees. And we're like sharing this little hula hoop. And I don't have a brand where I could talk to her. I would have loved to like, hey, what's up? And I even had that thought, but I was like, I am not talking to her. But I just stood there in the presence of the SUN, hot, hot, hot. And we're like sharing this, and she's just out of breath because she just got captured, and she was like running away, and she just sees me as a normal like kid. So, but like, this is like my soulmate, you know, and I'm just like, this is so hot. This is like the hottest moment of my life. It was the hottest moment of my life at that time. I know it sounds creepy, but that was the hottest moment ever. Well, yeah, it was. But the basketball was hotter over a longer period of time. The basketball was like 30 minutes while Katie O'Hearn was like pretend to be being a zombie in the tan bark. And Paige was like not laughing at it at all, but she was like, you guys are weird. And she was courtesy smiles every once in a while, but I got another game and a knockout with Eric. And Paige was so good at basketball that she beat me 3 times. But we never talked during that. We just said, okay, we'll go to the next game. I mean, we just knew. Because you don't keep score either. So it's like, you know, it's 8-5. No, it wasn't like that. I was knocking her out. Yeah, exactly. Some thought just came into my head. And to ease, you know. Purpose of life is to love. I just had a thought, like, there's a God. He's watching all this. And the fact that I'm here on video and this video works and all that stuff, it's just God exists, and I just feel, you know, I don't know, this is so weird, but I think we'll get to marry Paige after she's done with this husband. I had a dream that she was old, and I had a wine bottle like this. It was like a side wine bottle. And I walked up to her, and I was trembling over her beauty, even though she's all wrinkled up now. She was like 80 years old, and it was like, I was trembling over her righteousness and holiness, mostly holiness. I had a dream one time she was a prophetess. I have a lot of dreams about Paige in my dream book. Anyways, God may have been testing me in that dream. I didn't know I was dreaming. Is Eric really trembling over her beauty? When I first saw her, I was. 5th grade, I was like, oh my gosh. It was Jackie Sham 2.0. Because I did the same thing with Jackie Sham, except she wasn't nearly as overwhelmingly beautiful. She was more just cute, you know. But so cute. Jackie Sham was like super cute. That was 8 years old. Or 9. I was 9, she was 8. 3rd grade. And God asked me a very difficult question when I was playing dodgeball. I've said this in another video, but it was like, would you rather marry someone at like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, or someone like in your late 40s, early 50s, but they're way better? like higher quality. And would you rather have a lifetime of intimacy with an 8 or no one and then a 10? And then I just remember going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And God's just thinking, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, I don't know either. That's why I was asking you. And it was like, yeah, I don't know. And it was like, that's crazy. And I was thinking, because I was thinking Jackie would be this high intimacy. Oh my gosh. Hey, Chris. Oh my gosh. It's like, good thing nobody here heard any of that, except I'm on video. It's like, I would be super embarrassed if he had heard all that, but yeah, I'm dropping it to the internet. The internet is my friend. And it's like, I don't care who on the internet, who knows. And also, it's like, there's a lot of jokes on the internet, and it's like, I don't know, somebody tells me, oh, anyways. I remember picking one and then switching back, then switching back. And that's how you know it's one of the best questions ever. And would you rather, the most cringe, and I talked about this earlier, is both. Because it's like, really, you can't even pick between Superman and Batman? Both. Just exalt one over the other. And then neither makes sense if it's like, your wife and your kids, they're both going to die. Who do you save? And it's like, well, just even in the hypothetical, it just hurts to think about it. So neither, it feels the best. Whereas both, it's like greed. It's like, I don't want to play. It's like, I don't know. It's so much more cringe. And it's like, you don't know which one you like more. It's like, I don't know. And then, I don't know is a big one where it's just like, it's not both, it's not neither. I just need to think about it. That's a fine answer, but it's a loss. But it's one where the question asker gets, ooh, that's a good one. That's said all the time. The asker wins there. And then the biggest win is flip-flop. You pick one. Salty, no sweet. Salty, no sweet. Unfortunately, my dad hates the game. He can't stand apples to apples. Unless it's like a very specific, same species. Cristiano versus Ronaldo, he could do that. Although he doesn't like it that much, but he will do it, and he kind of likes it. But just, he makes fun of me. He's like, Sandy Beach or Snow Mountain? As if you can't compare those. And I was just like, ooh, that's a good one. And he was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, he doesn't even like Wayne Gretzky versus Michael Jordan. Even though they're both athletes, it's like, well, it's different sports. And yeah, he's so left brain dominant. And I'm left and right brain dominant. I'm just brain dominant. I have left brain is like chess and stuff, logic, reasoning. Right brain is more like art and music. But my dad has a massive heart where I have a little heart. And I just don't really understand. Like, let's go over here. I'll walk over here. I tell the story a lot. It's super cute. Well, do you want to go back here first? Do you want to? It's just so far away. Well, this is where patience comes in. I can just talk about something else till I get there. But this was, I was so spirit-filled, and I was just like, bing! I have this open vision. And I'm in the LDS temple on my knees. And in the vision, I'm like 12 and she's pages 11. And we have just tears going, both eyes straight down. And we're just looking down like this, humble. And we're just like this. And we're just crying straight down. And then it was so romantic and awesome and like holy and righteous and loving. And I just started bursting into tears. And very sarcastically, I just said, I don't want this. Here's where I was right here. And I was, I don't want this. I don't want this. And of course I wanted it. But so then and then I'm just like going like this. Like this. And I'm crying. And now I just feel like I need to go to Jill's house, Doug Harwood's house. Doug and Jill. So I'm like crying and I'm like running. I'm so overwhelmed. Go inside or knock on the door. No one's there. And then Caleb was there. Caleb Harwood. And he's like, hey. And then I come in and I'm just like crying. I didn't say anything. I tried to hug him and he's just like, ugh. He's like, okay. And he's like a vampire. And I was like, Doug's a really bad hugger too. But I just, at least Doug has an excuse. He doesn't like me. He has the gift of knowledge. And he doesn't want more. And he'll say stuff like too complicated. I said something like the internet is the imagination of man. Life is the imagination of God. And Caleb says that's true. And Doug says it depends what you mean by imagination. Which was way before the Jordan Peterson thing. It depends what you mean by. Doug was ahead of his time there. Jordan Peterson may have prayed for a long time and got that answer. This is your calling. What do you mean by happen? And once you go to all those words, what do you mean by just humans? What do you mean by God? What do you mean by believe? What do you mean by do? And we don't know what any of that stuff means. Everyone's carrying their own personal definition. You know, I was watching the Whatever podcast, very wicked show on YouTube, but it's just they bring on these, I guess you could call them promiscuous women who, you know, they say they've slept with 14 people and they're lying. It's actually more. Okay? Okay. I remember telling this guy actually over there about the tennis club. I just say, hey, are you a Christian? I was just started doing that. And he said, yeah, and asked him to say a Bible verse, and he ended up being 16 in high school, and I gave him the chastity talk. I said, in college, the girls are going to try to have sex with you, and you have to fight them off, you know. And I talked to him for probably 45 minutes, and he just gave me this look as I was leaving. And I remember I wanted to tell him that I loved him, but I didn't. I'm almost there. This Dr. Pepper's good, but it's not as good as normal Dr. Pepper. The cream overpowers. I just bought 12 cans of Dr. Pepper with extra cherry. It's pretty funny. In a can, they had that. I was like, it's too funny not to buy this. Okay, we're almost there. I remember I knocked on the door. Oh, we just bought the house from them. They're not here anymore. Really? You guys moved without telling me? No warning, you just left? So here it is. So I go in there and I'm just crying, crying. And then I left. And he saw that whole episode of me crying. But it was like I was overdosing on my love for Paige. Anyways, I saw a picture of her on my computer because I right-click saved her her Facebook picture. Now that's definitely creepy. I don't care what anyone says about that. But she's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my life. As she ages too. But it's just, I know what she's thinking. No, I know what she's not thinking. Put it like that. I don't know what she's thinking, but I know what she's not thinking. Which is amazing, you know. And I could be wrong about that, but she's really good at censor. You know, I was talking to Doug Harwood one time in the car, and it was just me and him, I believe. And I said, do you ever get these, like, really wicked, kind of disgusting, like, sinful, horrible, like, bad thoughts that just come into your head and you have to get rid of, fight off, destroy in quarantine? And he says, all the time. And I said, I don't. But, which was crazy, just, I mean, it's like, funny story there. That's just funny, but it's kind of true. I was in high school once, and I had that, so I was drawing from there. But once I turned LDS, originally, I was so ridiculously pure when I first joined the church. I had no bad thoughts at all. It wasn't until I found Sean McCraney and then missed church twice and started playing video games that I really started falling apart as a person. But I spent these last 16 years going on a Joseph Smith hunt and trying to figure out if he was a true prophet and he was with God and stuff. People think the Trinity from Catholicism is too complicated, which is really funny. It's hilarious, actually. And God's just like, okay, this is why I don't tell you guys anything. Joseph Smith once had a vision of Heavenly Father, like, trembling over kingdoms that he was exploring. And I interpret that kind of God asking himself difficult questions and then going through hell to answer it, because it's worth it to know the answer. And I think when God asked me Jackie Sham or Paige Zollinger, I didn't know who Paige Zollinger was, but like, I think I chose Paige Zollinger. It's the 50-year-old high quality over intimacy argument. I actually posted on YouTube, would you rather marry someone who loves you the most or someone who's way higher quality but loves you average? Loves you as much as she's supposed to, versus like the wife that's overdosing, can't wait till you get home, cleans and stuff. It's just, she's got all these flaws, doesn't really love the Lord that much, isn't as religious as you'd like her to be. I would go for the higher quality girl that loves the Lord, who's like she forgets that she was married to me when I walk in the door. I was like, oh yeah, my husband, that's right. She's just so obsessed with God, you know. I would much rather have that, not too clingy. So I believe that was the answer that was the answer that I gave. And you know what? Now that I think about it, God may be giving me the desires of my heart. I'm 34 here. And God has kept all the women away from me up until now. And still to this day now. I'm a virgin. Everyone knows that. But I think if I had just been like, oh, intimacy, 100%. 100%. Why would I think this? Why am I thinking this? All of a sudden, Jackie likes me. And she goes, hey. And I said, hey. And then we get married out of high school and we're having babies and stuff. And she's this good girl, but she's not great, right? But God's like, hey, that's what you wanted. I mean, I asked all the kids stuff like this. And, but God's thinking, give me 1,000 choices and I can find someone better than Jackie Sham. Does that make sense? Nothing against Jackie Sham. She's Christian. I'm just saying, like, for me, Asian girl, I have absolutely no feelings for her at all. I idolized her in 8th grade, or I'm sorry, 8 years old. I idolized her. She was actually came to my house one time, and I was just like, what the heck? How are you in my house? But her parents were there and talking to my parents, and she's just like, hey. And I was like, wow. Last thing I expected, you look over and it's Jackie Sham in your house. But 9 years old, I didn't like anyone in 4th grade. To 5th grade, Page and Page only, right? Yeah. 6th grade, no one. 7th grade. 6th grade. I don't know. I had my little Sammy Robles crush. Personality dominant. What an interesting video this has become. 56 minutes. 56. You know, I have a video of a bird. Ended up being a meme that the Lord wanted me to use to make fun of myself. Because Mormon chapter 9 verse 20, the reason why he ceases to do signs among the children of men is because they dwindle in unbelief and know not the God of whom they should trust. Okay, well, I guess I'm not supposed to say it. My dad just got home. 57 minutes. Bye-bye.